What's going on? It's Kyle Henderson and Tony Tuscaloosa. We're talking about our BamaInsider.com top 40, and we're inching down to number 1. We got 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 coming up, and number 5 is DeVonta Smith. You're talking about a guy coming back with just so much experience. Senior year, 6'1", 175 pounds, 13 games last season, 68 receptions, 1,200 yards, and 14 touchdowns. Tony, first of all, before we get talking about DeVonta, were you shocked that he's returning for his senior season?
When you say those numbers, it's a little shocking. But you look at all the receivers in this year's class, maybe he made the right decision just because there's so many of them. And I expect him to be a first-round draft pick this coming season. So, assuming nothing drastic happens and he doesn't get injured or anything, knock on wood. But I think he's going to have another productive season, and I fully expect him to be a first-round pick. So I don't think he's necessarily going to miss anything, by not going out for the draft.
He never really got talked about much during last season. I mean, just like you said, so many receivers, Jerry Jeudy, Henry Ruggs, I get it. It's tough to get the limelight. But, I mean, you rewind to last season against Ole Miss, he had 11 receptions, 274 yards with 5 touchdowns. What do you remember about that game?
It was crazy. I think he had 4 touchdowns and more than 200 yards by halftime, something like that. He had already beaten or topped Alabama's record by halftime. So it was ridiculous. I think if they really wanted to run up the score they wanted to force feed that stat, they probably could have gotten him some even more yards. I mean, who knows? Maybe he could have gotten to 300. He's a guy that kind of just came onto the scene, and now he's got a chance to set Alabama's touchdown record for career this season. I think he's about 8 away from that. He had a killer year. It was really fun to watch him at times too. The LSU game too, he had 200 yards there as well.
Yeah, I mean, this is a guy who really performs at the highest level, at the highest stage, right? I mean, just as you talked about, I mean, performed against LSU. And of course, you can't forget about, the game winner in the Natty, as his freshman season. So in 2018, he played in 14 games, 42 receptions, 693 yards with 6 additional touchdowns. And as a freshman, 14 games played, 8 receptions, 160 yards. For the career total, he's played in 41 games, 118 receptions, 2,100 yards, 23 touchdowns. Now, Tony put together this list, and this is the most impactful top 40. Tony, explain why you think he's going to be such a monumental addition. I mean, obviously, just being the receiver, but now he's kind of in that limelight. You're probably wondering out there, if you're keeping track, there's one more receiver ahead of him. But just talk about DeVonta Smith and what he brings, not only from a playmaking perspective, but also from a leadership standpoint.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, let's go from the playmaking ability. Not only can he make big-time catches, he can do stuff with the ball in his hands. He was one of the best receivers. He led Alabama in yards per after the catch per reception, and he's a guy that you can give him a 7-yard slant and he'll just make somebody miss and then just dash to the end zone. He doesn't have the 4.2 speed that Ruggs has, but he's still really quick. And he's just so smooth with the way he runs, and he's got great hands, probably has the best hands of that bunch from last year. So he's a guy that can do a lot from the physical standpoint, and from a mental standpoint, he's the returning captain. He's the only returning captain from last season. He's kind of a quiet leader because, we don't really see or hear too much from DeVonta, but the team leader, those team captain awards, they're voted by the team. And so it obviously speaks to what his fellow players thought of him. And so for him to return, I think he's going to be a big presence in that locker room, and especially on that receiving core, which, outside of Jalen Waddle, is not going to be that experienced.
Tony, when we look forward, not only, to this season, but past this season, do you feel this is a guy that projects as well as some of these other Alabama receivers in the past in the NFL? I mean, he's 6'1", 175. He's not the tallest. He's not the thickest guy. What do you think when we look down the road? Is this another NFL guy that will be playing on Sundays from Alabama?
Yeah, so I think some NFL teams are going to be a little bit scared about his build. He's not, like you said, he's not the thickest guy. He doesn't necessarily play small, but I think at the next level, that might scare some people off. So I think he's going to have to continue to prove that he's a tough guy, and he plays bigger than he is. He's quick too. He's not he's not, you know, world class speed like Henry Ruggs or Jalen Waddle. It's almost not fair that he had those players on his team, because it makes him look maybe not as fast as what he really is. But so he's got the speed to play in the NFL. He's definitely got the hands and the route running to do that as well. I think he's going to be a first round pick. And I think he's going to be a really successful receiver in the league.
All right, now before we end the video, I want to go back to 2017. Now that was the first year that we took over BamaInsider.com. Tony and I are both at this national title game. Tony, from your perspective, where were you during the national title game? We were both at the game, but where were you physically in the new stadium in Atlanta? And what do you remember about that final play, 2nd and 26?
Yeah, so the press box over there in Atlanta is it's in that end zone, but it's kind of in the corner, the opposite corner. And to be honest with you, the play kind of caught me off guard. You know, we're always trying to write, and it kind of seemed like I was going to be writing a tragedy, because, you know, Tua gets sacked. Alabama had already missed the field goal, so you're thinking, you know, gosh, they got to get some of this yards back to even tie it up, to even have a chance. You know, you think, what if DeVonta was to drop that pass? You're facing a 3rd and long out of field goal range. I mean, that could get really deadly. So it just kind of caught me off guard. It's like I looked up and Alabama had won. You know, I mean, it was I saw the play obviously, but it was like, oh shoot, okay, this guy's open. Oh God, you know, Alabama wins. You know, like you just weren't expecting the game to end on that play.
Yeah, from my perspective, in the media world, and maybe it's in the old media world, we're in the press box, and then with a few minutes left, some reporters go down to the field. So I'm at field level. I'm on the actual side where Alabama throws a touchdown. So I was out with my phone, and I'll never forget it. And it's 2nd and 26. I have the perfect footage on my phone and of Tua throwing it right to Smitty, him catching it, and I'm at the opposite end zone of where he caught it. So he catches on this end zone, runs across, and I'm in that huge media just melee of photographers. And there's a photographer who got knocked over. I mean, just the adrenaline going through, and, you know, just being new to Alabama and just kind of being new to all this, just seeing that and being a part of it is something that I'll never forget. I mean, such a magic moment. And you're right. I mean, if he drops that ball, it changes his legacy. Now he has that at Alabama, and just the player that he's, you know, become from that particular play. I mean, it's just been nothing but high expectations and high play from DeVonta Smith. Hey, please like and subscribe to our content. We're moving down to the BamaInsider.com top 40. We are closer. 4, 3, 2, 1 coming up next right here on BamaInsider.com. For Tony Tsoukalos and Kyle Henderson, we'll catch you next video.